So I'm an actor and a playwright and a novelist. And true to my métier, I will deny that I am expert in anything. I am a product of my time and place. And whether I think I know or even like Shakespeare, Shakespeare is in the air I breathe. He's in the water, the cultural current. He is literally currency. I'm a synthesizer, a magpie with a curatorial eye, a diver into Sargasso seas. I believe in messes. When I coach young playwrights and actors, I encourage them to make a mess, to dive into the mess, because only in the mess do you find your material. Only by reckoning with the mess do you develop the eye, the ear, and heart to recognize within it your material. Only by loving it unconditionally in its abject state do you develop the patience to free it from the morass, the skill to craft it, and the stamina to finish what you started. That's how you turn lead into gold. It's a very different process than the shareholder primacy of Milton Friedmanomics. For one thing, Messonomics is collaborative. It is carried on many shoulders and backs rather than one teetering metric. How can you expect a lonely little percentage point, even if it's 2 digits, to support the weight of industry, creativity, living, dying, loving? That little percentage point will crumple under the strain. When I was much younger, I was commissioned to write a play, which I called Good Night Desdemona, Good Morning Juliet. I had 3 months to write it before opening night. I got out my complete works of Shakespeare along with a ruler. I measured the average thickness of the plays. Then I divided them by the number of years Shakespeare was active. And wow, I discovered he had spent pretty much 3 months on each play. I could do that too. I may have cooked the books a little in that calculation, but it served. I also engaged in a developmental and rehearsal process that was by then meat and drink to me. Collaboration. Canadian theatre artists are steeped in this, whether we are playwrights, actors, directors, designers. Shakespeare was a theatre artist, and by definition, collaborative. I don't believe he wrote every word, which is different from saying there was a secret writer, some anonymous aristocrat. Are you kidding? Rich people do not write like that. I'm sorry, rich people. I'm sure some of you are very gifted and all that. But, you know, it's the fact that Shakespeare was ordinary middle class that was in his favor. The middle class was just being born in his time. It's no coincidence that there was a flowering of creativity. It's because, wow, making and selling gloves is way easier than laboring and dying. And now the glove maker's son, Will, can look around and go, there's more to life than making gloves. But I still have to make a living, so let's see. Old guy gives away his money to his daughters, lives to regret it. Danish prince suspect his uncle killed his father. So Shakespeare was a great writer. I think probably a decent actor. But I suspect he may not have been a great maker of plots. We know he borrowed his stories, but I wouldn't be surprised if his partner at the Globe Theatre, Richard Burbage, had a lot to do with organizing them into beginning, middle, and ends. Not to mention dialogue. You'd have actors saying, this doesn't work, can I say it like this instead? I mean, they weren't always right, of course. Will, do you mind if I say, oh, for the muse of lightning? You know, I think it works better than fire. What do you think? Oh, go ahead, try it. Lightning. Oh, for the muse of No, you know what, Will, I think fire is better. I think you were right the first time. So then you have comedians back then. They are responsible for the interminable, often Latin, and always unfunny stuff that barnacles onto all the plays. I'm convinced those bits were mostly improvised or came with a professional clown as part of his bag of gags. Comedians insist on riffing. 'Tis meat and drink to them. And Shakespeare and Burbage could afford to hire the best. So if you've got Steve Colbert or Tina Fey, they're coming with their own jokes, so just get out of their way. Shakespeare was freed up to do what he did best, making incredible poetry, incredible meaning, taking those old chestnut stories and mining them and making them flower and blossom and glow with something infinite. And he made an excellent living. That is not a contradiction, and our 20th century hangover of viewing money and art as in binary opposition is a form of snobbery, especially when the artists themselves hold this view. It's also a misunderstanding of history and of what artists do. I often felt out of joint with my own generation because I wanted to reach a lot of people. I wanted to entertain. I wanted to make a good living. I still do. I want to be your guide in journeys that will expand your heart and mind. Now, people don't take those journeys if you don't treat them well. Entertain them. It's called hospitality. My mother was Lebanese. When you sat at her dinner table, there were numerous dishes. Some people would like all of it, some people would like some of it, but there was something for everyone. Her immigrant family were small business people who started with nothing and made a big something. And they didn't wait till they were successful to give back. Okay, I have a hard time with that. It sounds like late-stage capitalist sanctimony. Time to give back. Why did you wait so long? And how much did you steal that you think you have to give it back? Give it all back! No, these Lebanese Canadian business people back in Nova Scotia gave and took and made and gave while they were doing business. They were making money because they were making community, and vice versa. So, I write for a living. I do a great deal of research, real concrete stuff, but I also do inner research. I mine my personal experience. I visit my own underworld, and I am keenly attuned to that of others. That is the source of the pulse. What makes the stories alive. I'm an empathetic person by nature, but I cultivate it professionally. I have developed professional-grade empathy. Part of how I make meaning is to delve into very sensitive places and ask, how am I going to make this shareable? How can I make it into something that can be owned by others? Something which enriches the owner in the act of giving it away. Something on which many people agree as to its meaning and its value. How am I going to make it into currency? Stories are my currency. That is both poetic and pragmatic. I do the diving, you do the reading and the watching. It's a bargain, and none of it happens in a vacuum. The final collaborator in any creative endeavor is the audience, or, in other terms, the consumer. So whether they're alone with a book or seated in the dark of a theater, that's when the ultimate alchemy occurs. Your eyes alight on the page, the stage, and something is born. I think that's what Shakespeare and his collaborators understood. And the fact that there were probably too many cooks, a lot of dubious ingredients, unstable folios, bad manners, and worse jokes is what has kept his work alive, oxygenated and contagious, loaded and fizzing with life, a literary microbiome available to endless interpretation, a fomenting font. A living library. Inspired by Shakespeare, here's a piece from that play, Good Night, Desdemona, Good Morning, Juliet, which I wrote as a very young woman. And it's spoken by the main character, Constance, who describes herself as a failed existentialist. I don't know if Lisa's still here. So I try to live and work by these simple words still. Life, real life, is a big mess. A harmony of polar opposites with gorgeous mixed up places in between, where inspiration steams up from a rich sargasso stew that's odd and flawed and full of gems and worn out boots and sunken ships, where every answer spawns another question, and every question blossoms with 100 different answers. Thank you.